I, 37 male, discovered that my girlfriend, 25 female, cheated on me with my son, 20 male, and I want to cut them both off, but they both begged me to forgive them. I was a young parent, my now deceased wife and I had my child when we were both just 17 years old. Unfortunately, she died suddenly at the age of 22, not long after we married, and I've been a single father ever since. It's been challenging, but I feel like giving it my all. Up to this point, I hadn't had much time for relationships. Before I met her, I've been devoting all of my time and energy to being a parent and expanding my business. I'm not claiming to have been a monk, only that nothing noteworthy has happened to me. Until now, there had never been someone serious enough to introduce my child to, but I only met AJ a little more than 3 years ago. I wasn't expecting it, but it didn't take long for me to fall in love. The first 6 months or so were more casual, but when we realized how much we loved each other, we decided to marry. I was even thinking about proposing to her on her 26th birthday, which is coming up next month. I was even thinking about asking my son to be my best man. I was hesitant to introduce them at first because I wasn't sure how he would react, so we waited a while. However, we've all gotten together since they met last year, and everything has been well. They haven't seen each other much this year due to lockdown and his absence at university, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I didn't get to see her much until last month because of the lockdown. However, I've noticed that she's been more quiet and irritable in recent weeks, which is troubling. I was especially intrigued by her response. She claimed she was overwhelmed. Similarly, I've noticed it in my son, who has become somewhat reclusive, but I assumed he was preoccupied with university work. I was able to bring it out to her when I saw her again this weekend, and she apologized for her behavior. She sobbed and said that she had cheated on me with another guy. That's all there is to it. I was astounded, so I was trying to elicit information from her when she revealed it had something to do with my son. She went out with her friends the night before the lockdown in November, and she happened to run into my son at a nearby bar. They were drinking, took a taxi, and ended up getting drunk together. I actually put her out there and told her I didn't want to see or speak to her again. She was asking me questions, betting with me, creating a scene, you name it, she was doing it. I quickly summoned my son and presented him with the realities of the case. He recognizes that he made a horrible mistake and begs me to accept his apologies. The guy has been told to go stay at someone's house, and I no longer want to look at him. He is now living with my mom. I haven't told her what he did, but considering how close we have always been, she understands the seriousness of the issue. Neither she nor my son have stopped calling, emailing, or texting me, appealing for another chance to prove themselves. I packed up her stuff that she had left here and deposited them in a rubbish bag in her front yard to be picked up later. I've even thrown away the Christmas presents I'd bought her so she might enjoy them sooner rather than later. I'm completely and utterly depressed. They were the two people I loved the most in the whole world. I hope to marry her, have children with her, and spend the rest of my life with her. Similarly, he was more than simply my child, he was also my best friend. I sacrificed a lot for him in order to give him a good life. They've also both stabbed me in the back in the most horrific way conceivable. I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive them. As far as I'm concerned, they should be able to socialize freely. I'm in a lot of discomfort. Update, so I practically ran into AJ next. I asked her the truth, what happened, and whether there had been anything else going on prior. She was vehemently opposed. It was basically a question of her having a drink with her friends and my kid being in the bar and getting drunk together. He acknowledged he liked her when they were sharing a cab, made a move, and that was the end of it. She was saying things she'd never say ordinarily, but since she hadn't seen me in a long time, and he reminded her so much of me that night, it just occurred. I told her to stop blaming the alcohol or anyone else and to take responsibility for herself, no one else. I also told her that she's the first person I've let in and loved since my ex-wife died, and that I've been happier with her in the last 3 years than I had been for years before that. I even told her I was going to propose to her. She sobbed again, telling me how sorry she is and pleading with me for another opportunity, saying she would never forgive herself. I told her she needed to do it one day so she could learn from it, but that's it for us. I am banning her phone number and email, and I don't want to hear from her again. I left feeling a lot better now that I've met her. As upset as I am, it's nice to have some closure. Simply to demonstrate that I don't really despise her, but rather pity her, her inability to manage her booze or keep it in her trousers has lost her connection with someone she loves about, and will certainly harm her relationships for years to come. Not that I believe she is any less accountable or deserving of the consequence, it also enabled me to realize how immature she is. Before this, I was blissfully unaware because I was content. It's made me really aware of it now. Never ever again. Now, this is my kid. I realized the other day that I was really upset when I wrote my post, and the way I was typing it looked too flatly disavow him. But please understand, he is my kid, my flesh and blood, and I adore him. He's also my wife's son, and I will never be able to get rid of him for her, but he has let me down and deeply damaged me. And I have lost not just all respect for him, but also all faith in him. So, I met him and got his version of the tale as well. It was much the same as hers, with the exception that he claimed she was being extremely flirtatious with him, and she said he reminded her of me. And that's when he told her he had a crush on her and made his move. I told him everything I had written about, that I love him but no longer respect him or trust him. I also informed him about my intentions, including the fact that I was planning to propose to her and even have him as my best man. He was devastated and was completely quiet until breaking down and weeping. I told him we needed to stop communicating for a while. He needed to find a job and stop working with me on weekends like he is now, and we needed to speak to my parents to see if he could stay with them for a time. But in order to do so, I wanted to be a grown-up and tell them why to their face as well as deal with the situation like a grown-up. As a result, I took him there and forced him to tell them. They were heartbroken, not only unhappy, but the expression in my mother's eye, I'll never forget it. She expressed her dissatisfaction with him, saying she never expected him to do anything like this. I asked her if he may remain there in the near future, but not for free. He must pay for his own room and board as well as contribute to the expenses, but he must provide his own food. She agreed because she admired me. I also sat him down and showed him that I'd moved over a big sum of money, explaining that it was money I was saving for AJ's engagement ring. But given what's occurred, I wanted to keep it as a memory and use it to pay his grandparents' rent, if nothing else. He was really taken aback, wanting to hand it back to me. I informed him that if he did that, we were done. We promised to keep in touch, at least until Christmas when we could all, myself and my parents, spend the holiday together. I've spent the last few days mostly reflecting. The focus is mostly on myself and why I chose AJ in the first place. I was quite pleased when she asked me out, despite the fact that I would never consider anybody that young. But in retrospect, she was the same age as my wife when she died, was of the same ethnicity, mixed race, and even worked in the same field. It also makes me miss my wife a lot. I've been enjoying some me time over the last few days, watching an Alan Partridge marathon. It was my and my wife's favorite thing to watch together, and it helps me feel near to her when I'm depressed. Edited to add, I'm trying to contact an old therapist I saw after my wife died and setting up an appointment with him. I'm going to see if he'll take on my kid as well. Edit, as a few people have mentioned, we may not be able to visit the same therapist or be in a conflict of interest. I hadn't considered it, so maybe I'll seek a reference from him for someone else who is more appropriate. Thank you. I absolutely need to work on myself before dating again. I believe I have too many difficulties to be a suitable companion right now, and when I do, I'm never going to date someone her age again. I'm thinking of going with a tight 80s policy of just looking for persons born in the 1980s and absolutely no one born after 1989. Thank you, and please accept my apologies for the wall of words.